And now he walks into h5? Yeah, that's when you look at him. Look, he goes like, what have I done? Hello to the chicos, hello to the chicas. This is round 6 from the Texas State Championship, and we continue our commentary as our friend Mr. Nelson is playing his first move in round 6. His opponent today is going to be a gentleman who goes by the name of Brian Xingzhu, and very clearly E4 best by test is on the chessboard. And trust me when I tell you about the opponent, we know that he's visually not present at the moment at the board, but he's definitely going to rock up. French on the menu. Brian is playing Nelson's repertoire against him because Nelson also plays the French. We already had a French with the white pieces for Nelson, which was... Oh, hello! Babeski! G3! Now, usually the King's Indian attack is kicked off by d3, not g3, with the idea that if d5, then knight d2 can shield the queen from the unwanted trade. So, after g3, it's a bit awkward because now I can't play d3 because take trades the queens, whereas bishop g2 is really unattractive on account of take, and then we are going to be hit with a tempo. What I suspect Nelson is cooking here is that he's going to play here knight c3, provoking the opponent to f5, and then he's going to sack a pawn with f3, which we have already seen from this lovely human. The creativity is kicking off at move 2, no less, and the opponent is definitely aware of the fact that he is playing against a creative mastermind, and he is definitely scratching his head. Yeah, objectively speaking, I reckon after bishop g2 best would be still to take. Knight f6 is a sensible move that French players would be very happy to engage with, because after e5, knight f d7, we are in a French structure which French players are so familiar with. Knight c6. I don't know what to think of this. I have a feeling that ED is not going to be played. Nelson doesn't want symmetrical structure, which leaves him more or less pretty much only with knight c3. Which, by the way, would suit his style, because then this would be a reverse King's Indian. Except, having committed to the bishop to g2 so early, d3 might be a move here, because after take, I guess I have knight f4. Queen here and then knight f3. Yeah, knight f3 played. I knew that was going to be the case. No other way. Knight f6 and d3 is going to be played for the same reason as knight c3, because there's no other way really to develop and not to take on d5. I don't think Nelson wants to take on d5. Yeah, d3. So he's basically trying now to stir in the game towards some kind of a King's Indian attack. Now the opponent always can take on e4, at which point again Nelson is going to take with piece, not with pawn, because he wants to once again avoid symmetry at all cost. d4 obviously is a possibility, but this is what Nelson wants. And then after that, f4, knight f3, and we are looking great. Bishop c5 is a possibility, I suppose. Bishop b4 is a possibility, and bishop e7 is also a possibility. By the way, now that black can no longer pressure e4 much more, we have got a chance to now finally play our own game and expand on the king side with f4, knight f3, and once again build up toward that King's Indian type of attack that we all so much love to do. Big thing by the opponent. h6. Wowzers. Okay. Didn't see that one coming. I would like to say something smart, but it's not so easy. Yeah, f4, man. That's all. f4. This is my move. Knight e2 is possible. Develop. But then after d4, we have to drop back to b1. I still don't think that Nelson would mind this the least bit. Because once again, this is our typical King's Indian story that we like to do a lot. Both Nelson and I, by the way. So yeah, d4, knight b1. Now, of course, we know that we are not supposed to put pieces back on the back rank especially once they were developed. But black can't take advantage of this at all, because d4 also closes off the center entirely. This would lead to a similarly close game as we observed in round 5, where Nelson played the Dutch Stonewall. So 92 logical, f4 logical, and everything outside of these two would be at least a smallish surprise for me. Yep, small surprise indeed. Knight h3. I'm trying to think about why Nelson preferred to put it on h3 instead of e2. So this is definitely not a big enough friendly opening by either color. So you are probably, if you are on the lower end of the opening spectrum, you are scratching your head going like, what are these guys doing? So let me help you out here a little bit. So the reason why he went to h3 and not f3 is because he didn't want to obstruct the view of the bishop. And the reason why that's relevant is because even if I go here, I'm not losing the pawn. But here I'm allowing a queen trade. Now, is there anything fundamentally wrong with the queen trade? Not at all. It's more of a taste kind of situation where Nelson doesn't want to play a symmetrical pawn structure with no queens on the board. It's boring, it's not fun. And so that's why he went to h3. Now, as to why not e2, I really can't tell you that. I think he should have. Yeah. That to me looked like a friendlier move. Sorry, I'm trying to immediately tidy up my lines. So knight f6, d3, h6, and knight h3. So yeah, knight e2. The only upside to knight h3 over knight e2, sorry, rather here, is that now if d4, then I can drop back here, and then f4, and the other knight will come back here, and then we can start pushing pawns, right? Whereas if I go knight e2, then after d4, I have to go back home. Then again, typically in King's Indians, the knight on d4 doesn't stand well at all. And so it's not really a great achievement to retain that square for the knight to go back to. Paradoxically, it's actually very good to go back to b1, because the weak square is c4, where my knight can go to. Whereas from e2, especially after black plays e5, I can go absolutely nowhere. But knight h3 is definitely playable. What it also allows white to do is to occasionally consider the capture on d5 and then pile up on the pawn with knight f4. By the way, in case you are tuning in and you haven't seen the first 5 rounds, I am International Master Andras, a fellow chess YouTuber, and this is our collab with the legendary Mr. Nelson. Bishop b4. Now castles seem more or less forced. But again, this introduces the possibility of a queen trade. Although in this position, maybe Nelson would play something like bishop a3 to cut the king out of castling. So that's quite fun. Yeah, I'm not quite sure about bishop b4. I don't dig it because white wanted to castle next anyway. What's the point of forcing it? So he's probably committed to this idea. And then maybe bishop a3 to cut the king off. That's a cool idea, actually. And now we certainly have compensation for the sacrificed pawn. Otherwise, if they don't take, then bishop b4 was a complete waste of a move. I mean, it's developed, it allows black to castle, but then maybe on c5 or even on e7, it would have been better. Yep, castles. Okay, very good. And now this is going to be a key moment in the game when the opponent can decide to give up the bishop pair and wreck the structure a little bit, but also compromise their potential castling rights, or castle right away, at which point it remains a bit of a question as to why the bishop stands on b4 so well. Note that d4 is not a good way to start this proceeding, because then knight d4 dodges the trade. And then after take, I can take with pawn or bishop if I want to. So that looks good for us. My prediction? Castles. But he wants to calculate now the consequences of take, 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 because it's a concrete line and it requires calculation. This is very appealing for black. If we take back, take, and now it is the price to pay for the knight being put on h3. Black plays e5. It opens up the diagonal of the bishop, but also cuts off the knight's most obvious square toward the center. So this is why I suspect that Nelson would not want to recapture in this point on e4, but rather play some enterprising pawn sack idea, whether it be knight f4 or bishop a3 or those two really. Yeah, there we go. Castles. Very good. And now if you wanted to continue playing in the spirit of the opening, then f4 is pretty much the only logical follow-up, which introduces, by the way, the threat of e5. Now, a lot of lower-rated players, amateurs, club players, when they see a move like this, they go like, but hang on a second, this is weakens white's king, doesn't it? No. Or, yes, but it's irrelevant. Pick your favorite answer. The point is that, in fact, it is white who is looking to generate a kingside attack by playing e5, g4, f5, and ultimately rip into the black king. So, in these types of positions, for example, after f4, it's a lot more so the black king that needs to be a little bit concerned about the future, not the white one. And f4 on the board. Today is my day, friends. Today is my day. Now, take is still on the cards. But now this is marginally better from white's perspective, because even if I retake, the e5 idea is no longer as good as it would have been earlier, because I have got now knight f2, but perhaps I even have f5 to shut the bishop down. Mind you, that bishop can come out this way, so that's debatable, but knight f2 is definitely fine. However, now is the first time when I'm thinking that this is almost the only thing that black can play for here, because having put the knight in front of the c-pawn, the c5 break can't be played, and consequently expanding in the center and queenside by black is entirely off the cards. So in fact I do predict here that they are going to take on c3 and then on e4. If bishop c5 check, we just simply slide away to the corner and we are golden. Knight f2 is also playable. Yeah. Takes, and he's gonna take e4. Yeah, I'm predicting this game really well actually, and yeah, I mean Nelson can be super cocky and play knight f2 and just sack a pawn and go like, yeah, oh good, fine, no worries, I'm happy with this, but objectively speaking, d is the move. Okay, g4. G4, the creative genius has struck again. Oh man, I bet that this guy had an agenda before he started playing this tournament, that he was going to fool whoever was going to do the commentary on his games. And by the way, this is a mighty good move too. It is a mighty good move. He wants to attack on that kingside. And yeah, he doesn't take any prisoners. Pawns are of no consideration. If you take, I take back. Open diagonal, thank you very much. And now we want to bite into that king with g5. Yeah, loving this stuff, man. Loving this stuff. This I actually definitely approve of. Like earlier on, Nelson has played a few moves like that bishop h6 crazy attack with white followed by rook f7. I think it was round 4. Yeah, that I did not approve of at all. This, I am definitely behind. This is looking like $1 million. Let's go, baby. The opponent is surprised. How can you be surprised when you're playing against Nelson, bruv? Of course, even I got surprised. And finally, our opponent committed. And his commitment was to a move that is only way to describe is utterly disgustingly ugly. Knight h7. That, friends, no way on earth can that be a good move. Remember I told you about the mantra that bad looking moves that look ugly are usually bad. Now this looks sinfully ugly. A developed knight moving away from the center, it just looks all kinds of horrid. Instead, the correct way, into the center, friends. There's absolutely zero reason for that knight to go back to h7. None. It doesn't even support g5 sufficiently because I'm backing it with 3. So g5 is still playable and perhaps will be played. Nothing wrong with bishop e4 either, but I don't see any reasons whatsoever why Nelson shouldn't pursue his plan. If anything, this move is asking for it rather than stopping it, so let's go. Yeah, g5 played, very good. Takes played. And Now Nelson can go nuts again with bishop e4, a new in-between move. But quite frankly, I don't see any reasons why we shouldn't take back on g5 with the pawn. Knight takes, according to the machine, is also possible. It doesn't come to me naturally, because I wouldn't want to trade this knight. I would much rather just take like this. So probably Nelson is going to pull another bunny out of the hat and play something like queen h5. What is it gonna be, sir? Queen h5, fg, knight g, bishop e4. All of those are on the cards. Very, very fun position. This is what Nelson wanted. Oh, okay. He plays the most natural move on the board, fg5, so no quirky business with queen h5 this time round. And insta e5. Wow. I admire this dude's self-confidence for playing that move so quickly. Now, this move is designed to open up the bishop's diagonal and thus denying bishop takes e4. And so as a result of that, the first move you should look at in these types of positions is bishop takes e4. Because the logic of chess is that if your opponent plays a move with a very clear intention that seemingly disallows your most obvious or the move that you wanted to play, the first thing you check is, can I still do it? Which has become known as the Shankland rule because Sam Shankland popularized this method of thinking, or rather he claimed it to himself. I have been talking about this for decades as well. And the idea, of course, is that now there is a double attack on h3 and h7. The latter is a mate in one threat, so g6 is forced, and then we can capture on h3. And then there is this very interesting variation, knight g5, queen g4, knight e4, and DE, when we are down a pawn, but the dark squared bishop may come in and cause quite a bit of trouble amongst the black's ranks. If we go queen h5 right away, then I think takes on d3 is annoying because the queen takes and resumes, so rather re-enters the defense. So this is not it. Yeah, bishop e4 is the move for sure. Very, very cool move. Hanging the knight, but allowing queen h5 with a checkmate threat and hitting the loose piece. And we went queen h5. Right, I did highlight this move, and I did highlight that I didn't like it because of ed. Now, maybe Nelson thinks that bishop e4 is the way to go here, but that walks into g6. So I'm actually not sure. I dislike this move quite a bit. I really would have liked bishop e4 first and then queen h5. Queen h5 immediately allows this when black has a game-winning threat with d2, and that seems to put a dampener on our mood, because now after takes we are covering every single threat for black. Chesscom, as you can see, labels this is a miss and it drops the bar a fair bit. Yeah, I really don't know what Nelson wants to play against ED, but it will be some wild stuff, rest assured. Okay, g6 played. Oh, I see. Maybe he was afraid of g6. That doesn't make sense. I just take it. Yeah, that doesn't add up. I don't know why he played g6. This is weird. ED was better. Queen h4, and again ED is the move to play. And now we have got a bit of a traffic jam on the h-file where neither of our pieces can really do too much. In particular, the knight on h3 is very poorly placed, but it wants to reroute this way or this way, and then ultimately go toward f6 or h6. But yeah, objectively speaking, I don't think I can do this because of d2. So I have to take back on d3 first. Queen takes, knight f2, and queen takes. And we took a lot of pawns, as in black did, but Nelson might be thinking about some mate attacks like this, except it doesn't work because knight takes, pawn takes, and then queen check. Trades the queens before that queen could go in for glory. Right, so g6 was our move. ED. Yep. And once again, this is where I looked at CD knight f2. I'm a bit concerned, but it may work. Very chaotic position again in true Nelson style. The engine favors black, also part of Nelson style, and I'm pretty sure that will be fine in the end, which summarizes the Nelson style. Yep, after a very big thing, we retook on d3, which was definitely the most rational choice. And now after queen d3, we need to ponder whether we want knight f2, bishop a3, or none of the above, and perhaps rook f3. Which kicks the queen, defends the pawn. That is also a possibility there. My favorite thing to do here, I reckon, would be knight f2. The engine likes this the least, by the way. Because now I've got this rook lift available. Regrettably, black also has knight d4 here. Ooh, but then I might be able to come in here. Hello. So maybe queen d4 to pin that. Yeah, and then continue developing. Yeah, that looks healthy. I mean, taking in my mind is more or less the only real move to consider. Knight e7 perhaps, with the idea of bringing the knight to f5. We have seen this idea earlier. This could be actually it. Yeah. Yeah, he did play the more humble, less greedy move. Knight e7 instead of taking d3. And now he definitely wants to play knight f5, which once again is going to put a bit of a dampener on our exciting mode for Nelson, because this signals the end of the Kingside initiative. Interesting quality battle, by the way, between the two. Very clearly this is one of the most interesting opening / early middle games from Nelson's tournament. In competitive sense, and yes, our opponent here is a 1925 rated player, the highest rated opponent so far, so as expected, it's a good battle. Okay, so Nelson played bishop e4, the opponent played knight f5. I believe we took it, they took back, and this is not looking good at all, by the way. Yeah, he went back to f2. Okay, so let's reflect on what's happening now. So, for the first time, it's relevant to note that we're down a pawn. And the reason why it's relevant to note, because this is the first time in the entire game, right here, right now, with knight f2, when Nelson has played a defensive move. He is going backwards to cover a pawn. This, by default, by definition, immediately means that his initiative somewhat or entirely has evaporated. Because if we have the attack, we have the initiative, we are not defending pawns by going backwards. And now, considering that we are going backwards while we are being down in material, the two things combined means that we are 100% definitely worse. Now, where did we go wrong to land in a worse position? Unfortunately here, queen h5 was a mistake. And as indicated by yours truly already multiple times, bishop takes e4 was the way to go, leaving the knight on prey, but allowing the threat of queen h5 coming in next. Also, having to play bishop e4 and then giving up the bishop was really, really unfortunate, because now this king is getting also a little bit vulnerable and exposed. With the bishop on g2, it felt quite safe. Our opponent played f6, a move I disapprove of, by the way. Rook e8 followed by knight would have made more sense to me. This weakens the king side without any good reason. Take, he's desperate for a queen trade, and Nelson pulls the queen back to g3. Of course, with a pawn down, we do not wish to play an endgame, and of course, because both kings are fairly vulnerable, he prefers to keep the queens on and hopes to outsmart the opponent in the ensuing complications. Now, obviously, knight e4 and knight g4 are both on the cards because the f5 bishop is pinned. But neither of those two moves create any meaningful threats beyond attacking the queen. For example, knight g4, queen, I could even go b6, but maybe just queen e6. Hitting the knight. Check, and we sidestep it. And black is definitely a happy camper here. Opponent instead of playing rook here, went queen e6, c4. Now the idea of c4 is to blunt the queen's diagonal this way, open up the bishop's diagonal this way. Now playing for bishop b2, knowing full well that queen g5 is not on, is totally fine. And now the opponent played rook e8, and I think this is where we are playing bishop b2. Yes! Okay. Okay. And opponent's response is knight f6. This is how the game is gonna go. Sozi, my bad team. Yeah. Okay, now this is much, much better from black's perspective. White's perspective, excuse me, because the queens are still on. e5 is under noticeable pressure, and we haven't even brought the last dude to the party. So that looks definitely more on point. Yeah, he plays knight f6. And then, after knight f6, Nelson plays rook a e1. Beautiful chess, by the way, by both players. I really, really appreciate seeing fully developed armies, especially when both sides have fully developed. Somehow it's aesthetically pleasing to me. It's like a piece of art, where everyone is doing what they are meant to. It always gives me a very pleasant feeling. The chess coach in me and the chess idealist in me goes like, ah, yamaho. Okay, so now e5 is on. And the best way to defend it appears to be knight d7, when maybe knight e4 blockading the pawn is best course of action, but I can play rook e3 and double up as well. Alternatively, maybe was worried about d4, but that hangs c4. So yeah, knight d7 was the way to go. Knight h5, not so much. Reason? Because now we are going to trade everything on e5, and we're going to fizzle out into a draw. Because now Nelson is going to recover the lost pawn, but the position with the opposite colored bishops on is definitely not going to give realistic winning chances to either side. It's a bit of a chicken move, to be very, very honest. I mean, if you have an extra pawn and it's hanging, you might as well try defending it, right? But he just thought, nah, okay, Nelson is dangerous. Let's call it a day. And roughly, what it would look like is this. Take, 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 take. Let's say pawn c6 or c5, doesn't matter. Level material, opposite colored bishops. Neither side will have any winning chances whatsoever. Okay, so knight h5, take, take was correct. Bishop takes. Something happened and... oh, I see. They played c6 here. Okay, never mind. That was actually not a biggie. That was really not a biggie. Take, take. Bishop took. And then c6 was played. And now Nelson is going to go rook e3. Which is very logical. He wants to double up on the e file. Provide extra support to the pawn, the bishop on e5. But also allowing potentially the removal of the bishop. Trade one pair of rooks. Then penetration. And if I'm not mistaken, this is where our opponent is going to play knight f6. Which is again the most shamelessly playing for the draw type of move. Because now we want to trade even the knights. And the more we trade down toward opposite colored bishops, the more drawish the position gets. Okay, so Nelson doubled up. And I predicted knight g4. And if knight g4 is played, I'm going to win the lotto this week. Yeah, knight g4 was played, take was played, take was played, rook g3 was played, and now it's going to drop back to f5. Both players know that the writing is on the wall, and this is headed for a draw. Oh, he changed his mind and is going to h5. Okay, okay. The advantage of putting the bishop here rather than here is that it keeps the open, the f file open, and it isn't is what I wanted to say. That's didn't and doesn't combined. It doesn't allow white to play h4, h5. The downside of it is that the bishop on f5 was more actively placed as it was bearing down on the pawn on d3. Either case, rest assured, we are headed to draw territory. In fact, I'm going to jump on to the next. And we find ourselves with d4 being played. Now, rook f3 is a move, rook f5 is a move. Rook f7 is a move. Yeah. Trade. Nelson is gonna take. King takes king f2. Oh, by the way, did I not win the lotto then? Oh, dang it. I think I did not. Yeah, I find it difficult to commentate this because it's so drawish. And everyone knows, including the players, the camera, the cameraman, the arbiter, the janitor of the building, that this is gonna head for a draw. But you kind of want to play it out because you never know when your opponent slips up. But nonetheless, we know what's gonna happen here. What happened was that they traded. We played rook e3, and the bishop went back to g4. Now rook g3 can be met again by either of the bishop moves, and you can say that, oh yeah, but now we can create a passed pawn. That is very true, but that passed pawn is really not gonna go anywhere. You can go as far as d6, but then to push it through to d7 is going to prove to be borderline impossible, since that's the color, or rather that's a square, that I can control with both of my heavies, but white can only control it with the rook. That's why most opposite colored bishop endings tend to have an extremely large drawish tendency, because even an extra pawn can't make a difference because it gets stopped, blockaded so easily. Yep, as expected, d5. Maybe there is a hope in the lotto. Take. By the way, a super cheeky move here is bishop f3, hitting the pawn, and if you take, I take. There's not a chance this guy is gonna play it. He's going to play bishop f5, I reckon. Actually, maybe bishop f3. He seems to be seriously considering something impactful. Nah. Lame. That's a chicken move. This is the high T move. And if d6, by the way, then you slide the bishop back to c6. It fulfills the duty of covering this beautiful long diagonal and stopping the pawn from advancing to d7. And now, by the way, even the king can walk over and cover important light squares. Okay, so take, and then rook d8 played. d6 played, rook d7 played. He's building up some kind of a fortress with the idea of putting the bishop here and then walking the king to the center. And indeed, this is as drawish as it can get. I think Nelson is going to pull the bishop back to g3. He played rook d3, and then the opponent played king f7. Yeah, there is no point in putting the rook here because that rook is not going anywhere, and therefore to support the pawn from behind doesn't really make too much sense. The natural looking idea is to come in here and then come in here, but that is not going to make any difference either, because when we go in here we actually don't have a threat. We can't take this and we don't want to take that. It's slightly awkward for black, but just go here, and yeah, no worries. Rook d3 is definitely a bit of an oddball, because now we are stuck behind the pawn with the rook, not only with the bishop. Yeah, king e6 is fine. Literally any move. b5, b6, bishop f5 back, yeah, king e6. I mean, this is as good a time to offer a draw as any. Nelson went check. The opponent went king d5. Nelson went check. The opponent went king c6. And we slid across to a5. Hello, our super cheeky opponent played rook to f7. Wow, okay. Now that is the type of move that Nelson would throw in for added measure. And here it is our opponent who does that. Very, very cool. And a general reminder that with opposite colored bishops, sometimes the kings can get a little bit tender. The idea is this. Rook takes, bishop a3, checkmate threat. Hello? Every move loses barring bishop f2, and then after king takes d6, now the position is even more drawish than before. Which is why Nelson, after rook f7, played h4 to create an escape square for the king on h2. And that's how that h-pawn came by to be on h4, and now the opponent is going to play a6, I believe, and that's when we are going to slide across. I think it's gonna go like this. Yeah, he played a6. And now Nelson is immediately going to reroute the rook back. I think he's going to go to g5. Yeah. Yeah, bishop h5, rook to e5. Cheeky move. Pause, boys. Pause. Seemingly covering the bishop, and so the pawn is hanging. But that would allow Nelson to pick off the bishop with a discovered check. The additional plan is to potentially penetrate, but even that does nothing because after take, the king is still within range. Alright, buddy, you can play a move. Yeah, bishop g4. Immediately bringing the bishop back. And rook e7 is playable, but it yields absolutely nothing. But then again, nothing yields anything here. Rook e4, bishop f5. Yeah, it is a bit of a tricky one to commentate because, yeah, it's dead draw. I'm not even quite sure why the players are playing. We are past 40 moves, so I think offering an offer, would be completely legal, and winning chances are nil. Okay, bishop h3, fine. As good as any other would have been. King h2 played. Now the bishop is going to slide back to f5. No, by the way, it's not optimal to have the king here. You would rather be toward the center. But like black's king on c6 is much better placed. But it is what it is. Yeah, bishop f5 played. And now Nelson is going to go either chook or non-chook. Yep, rook d4. And then our friend played bishop e6. I hope you guys don't mind me regularly skipping in the footage, but as much as I would like to make this entertaining and educational for you, this is a chess equivalent of watching paint dry. Like, not indicating it's boring, indicating that it's uneventful. That there is nothing that is going to happen here. And there are not even, clever ideas that I could convey here to you. Like, oh, if we can try this and then they can go wrong. Like, no. There's absolutely zero chance that anything untoward can happen for either side here. Bishop d5 was played, not king c5, apparently. Okay, bishop f4. Dude is going to go back to e6, I reckon. No, that's where he played king c5. Tentative bishop e5. I still dislike this formation, by the way. It's safe for the time being, but it just... yeah, it doesn't feel right. But rook f5 is not playable on account of d7, so that's a justification. He's going to drop back to e6. Yep, told you so. And I think this is where Nelson might play king g3. Yes, king g3 now. Goody. Bishop d7. He seems nervous. Maybe there is some time situation going on here. Because the board doesn't justify it at all. Yeah, bishop d7, and I think this is when Nelson is going to go rook f4. So his cheeky plan with rook f4, if I'm not mistaken, oopsies, is going to be like this. He wants this. He then wants a terrible move by black, although it's not terrible, but an irrelevant one. And then he wants black to play this. And now we are winning because of h5. We can't take because that drops the bishop. And otherwise the pawn unstoppably marches in. Heads up, not going to happen. Why not? Because after king g5, first of all, black can even afford losing the pawn, or rather attacking the bishop first, forcing it back, and then, even here I can afford losing the pawn by playing a5, but bishop e8 is the point that I wanted to make. And after king f6, I go king c6, you go king e7, and I still hold the pawn. And if you attack me, I hold it again. And there is no progress to be made. I defend this, and I'm also holding the d pawn's advance. Even if there was an additional pawn on b4, it would still be a draw. So that's just a hypothetical of how this all could go in case of rook f4, which I believe is coming. Yeah, rook f4. On the board. And that is definitely going to be smacked. So this is a way to lose again. That's the motive you need to remember. The king is tagging the bishop and h5, h4, and so on. He went back to c6, correct move. Now after king g5, bishop e8 is playable. Also note that as much as we are excited about the pass pawn and the pot that we can stir on the king side, we shouldn't forget that black has 2 pawns here. Yeah, bishop e8 instantly played. And I think this move is the one that was the last coffin in the winning hopes for Nelson. Like, now there is absolutely nothing left to play for. King f6, king d7, and as tight as the defense looks, in terms of very few moves available for black, there is no zugzwang scenario here to be had, because I can always pass to and fro between these 2 squares. Oh, he pulled the bishop back, b5, he pulled the king back, and then bishop f7. So I was gonna say, as far as I'm concerned, draw is probably the fairest result to this game. Neither sides really had chances of winning. Black had the upper hand in late opening and throughout the entirety of the middle game, but then they gave the pawn back, and ever since that went down, the endgame was extremely drawish. Wow, these guys are gonna go on for another half an hour from here? Oh, I think I know what happened. Nelson is about to play bishop b4, and the guy plays bishop f5. And now he walks into h5? Oh, but now it's not winnable. Oh my god, he went onto the only square that he was never meant to go to. But even h5 is not winning. Oh, yeah, that's when he... Look at him. Look, he goes like, what have I done? Now, that is, by the way, utterly ridiculous to do that. Because you don't know whether your opponent sees it or not. And that body language immediately gave away that he blundered. So even if your opponent doesn't see it, that body language just went like, oh my god, I blundered. And then your opponent goes like, what has he missed? Now, of course, Nelson had seen this earlier, and so he knew that this was on. Now, to calm the nerves, it's still a draw. But now it's a fighting draw. And the reason why it's still a draw, by the way, because I can move the bishop down on the diagonal, and after h6 I can play g5 and reopen the diagonal and cover the square of the pawn. And once again, you see here how utterly useless our bishop is. If it was moving on a light squares, it would be game over, because all we would need to do is to get it here. But as is, we can't use this bishop to support this pawn, so we have to rely on the king. But king up allows this pawn to run. And lo and behold, I can't catch up with this pawn with the king, so I have to use the bishop. But then these pawns start running. And so now we need to be really, really careful. And now I can defend it. And now neither side can make any progress whatsoever. Super fascinating line. We got very unlucky here in the sense that the opponent blundered into the only motive that was there to be blundered. Like in this position, he could have played bishop anywhere. Literal anywhere. Any of these squares would have done the trick. And so we're now down to the h5 bishop here. Here g5. And now Nelson is trying to come up with the goods. He's forcing the pawn forward, and he's going to try to hunt it down with the king. The problem with this story is that loses the d6 pawn. So actually, I changed my mind. I think he wants to go here, because here the bishop is covering both pawns, and so the king is free to go. The problem with this relocation of the bishop is that now it allows black to start pushing these guys. Yeah, bishop f4 as predicted. And a5 is good, but I don't even need to commit to those pawn moves yet. I can just play a pass. And wait for white to reveal their hand, which way they are going with the king. If king d4, you can just hold the pawn here. And remember that now you are free to pass with the king to and fro. If the king marches on, then we start pushing the pawns. King up, pawn up, and now we lost. Because after takes, we can take back, pawn up, they take, and now one of the pawns are going to promote to queen. So Nelson has to be careful with that. So he has played bishop f4. But, yeah, the game is still dead draw. A5 is also draw. B4. Take. Take. King C4, King E6. Now we win a pawn. But now I can utilize a new plan, which is to bring the bishop to F5 and just hold the position with the king here. This is the silly way to do it though, because it gives hope. So what you want is just pass. Oh, he played A5 though. Okay. Right, so King D5 is coming. Or bishop back. King D4. Okay. Okay. Yeah, B4 played, so he's getting rid of with all the pawns. So the way how the strategy that you want to follow here in with regards to how do we draw this, which I suspect is going to happen, is that this gets traded off. We go here, right? Then we go King E6. It gets taken. We go King F7. It comes back here. And now we are 2 moves away from drawing it. So what you want to do is this. King here. You attack the pawn, you sack the bishop away, and you push this. And now white simply has to eliminate the pawn, and that means the death of the final pawn on the board with an incredibly well fought draw in the end. Okay, we got a bit of an excitement in the end, and it's always cool. Yeah, that's exactly what went down. So B4, tuck, tuck. Yeah, King C4, very good. Our friend dropped the bishop back to F5. King takes B4. And King E6 is coming. Wait, what? King E8? Oh, yeah, okay, so that... yeah, the bishop diagonal is open that way too. Makes no difference. He's bound for King G6. Bishop F5, A5. King F7, King C5, King G6. This is what's going to happen. Yeah, that's it. Bishop F4 played, G3 played. GG, gentlemen. A very, very exciting game of chess. Well into actually now we are on to move 70, just about 69. Yeah, great game. The opening was again quite a quirky choice, definitely offbeat by most standards. Nelson, as per usual, sacked the pawn, went for a creative, hopeful kingside attack that didn't quite materialize. The opponent managed to fend it off, and then the late middle game basically ended up being an opposite colored bishop scenario, which the endgame did not change in terms of evaluation, and a draw was acquired. Yeah, don't worry, Nelson is gonna come back and draw will be accepted. No, he went the other way just to prove me wrong. And now our opponent is gonna get a queen and then draw. Yeah, and draw has been agreed. Yeah, all right. Well, that was a very, very fascinating game, and yeah, we still have a +1, meaning that we are going into last round, which is round 7 with 3.5 on the scoreboard. We are going to have likely a black game for the final round, so make sure that you guys stay tuned and stay around. I'm going to deliver that game to you as well. Once again, a fascinating draw, exciting game. Anyway, that was it, guys, for today. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to smack that like button, leave a comment down below. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so. Also check out my content, please, at Chess Coach Andras on YouTube, and I'm going to bring you the last round. Until then, take care. See you next. Bye.
All right, guys. I actually thought I had a win at the end of this game. Clearly, I did not. I never really had a win, which, okay. I mean, what are you going to do? I played a good game. My opponent played a good game. We got a draw. This is 1900 chess these days. I don't even know. I don't even know what to say. I thought I had a win, though, at the end. Well, okay, and I'll also say this. This moment of the game, I felt like I had a really nice attack. And Black defended pretty nicely. Engine doesn't like knight h7, but apart from that, they defended very well. Played good moves, and I couldn't really find any way through. And we get this opposite color bishop ending. Of course, it's probably going to be a draw if I can't figure something out. And then there was this moment I really thought I was winning. Like, I couldn't believe that I wasn't winning after the, where was it? Right here. I thought this was a blunder. So, because H5, right? Now I have 2 weaknesses, 2 pawns. But no, it's not. It is not a win. It's not a win. It's so crazy. It's a draw. Now, Stockish would have played Bishop, what would it have played? Bishop E1? No, but it's still equal. Yeah, it's just a draw. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? You try to attack, you try to be aggressive, you play with 96 something accuracy, and you get a draw. I can't be upset at myself, but mentally I'm totally drained from that game. So I don't know. I hope you guys found it interesting at least, and well played to my opponent, obviously for defending even this ending. Yeah. Okay. See you in round 7.